right. Well, guys, I'm circling back tonight to the point of the entire Asherah study. And I'm trying a new format here. Let me know if you like it, don't like it. I've been slow in getting videos out because I'm trying to understand what it is I'm supposed to be saying with all of this. At the end of the day, I don't do this because I want viewers. I don't do this because I want people to listen to what I have to say. In fact, if I had it my way, I would be in a corner with nobody listening to me. But what I've realized is the most important things in this book are not being said. They're not being taught, and you guys are suffering for it. We're all suffering for it. So the reason for all of this suffering around us is in this book. The contracts that we have signed as a people are right here. And it explains exactly why the famines and the plagues and the government control and all of the insanity and the famines and the droughts and the lack of food and the wars are happening. So when you see the answers and nobody's explaining it, and everybody thinks that they can just go to their next election and vote Trump or vote Biden and it'll fix the problem, we've missed the point. The point is the answers are right here, and all we have to do is stop doing what we're doing. That was the message of all of the prophets, all the way through this Bible. And it's finally percolated down into something where I think I can explain it. I read all of these books and study these concepts, trying to understand. I don't want to know, I want to understand. All of the stuff that has gone on, both historically, biblically, the religions, the wars, the conflicts, it all paints a message. And that message is the state of humanity. We are at the cusp of a ginormous shift in the state of humanity, either for the better or for the good. And I believe I know what's going to happen next, because it's all laid out perfectly if you know how to look at it. So don't take my word for anything I'm saying. I'm going to point to the answers that I have found. And I have looked at every single source that I could possibly think of. And before I look at any source, I want to share with you there are two major biblical places that tell you how to test if a prophet is authentic or false. And when I read anything, I don't just test prophets, so to speak. I test all information, that no matter who it's coming from, whether they call themselves a prophet or a teacher or a father or a mother or a brother, or a mentor, a CEO, a president, a king, whoever is in the position of authority, there are two places in the Bible that tell you how to test if their authority is being wielded righteously or not. And it goes back to 1 John chapter 4 is the most concise one. In verse 1 he says, "Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God. For many false prophets have gone out into the world. By this you know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ, Yeshua HaMashiach, has come in the flesh is from God." Now, this is important because it's not just talking about heavenly beings. It's talking about a spirit, a way of being, a way of functioning. If somebody's spirit, if their aura, if their energy does not align with this understanding that Yeshua has come in the flesh, then it's a false authority. It's a false leader and it's a false prophet. And you are to obey them as far as you're commanded, but you are not to serve them in a spiritual sense. And to validate that, oh man, I just lost my place. To validate that, we're going to go to the source where John was writing from. he was referencing Deuteronomy chapter 14. Sorry, 13. If a prophet or a dreamer of dreams arises among you and gives you a sign or a wonder or a miracle, and the sign or wonder that he tells you comes to pass, and if he says, let us follow after other gods. Now remember, especially in our modern age, that's not going to be the same lingo. Let us follow after other gods. It can mean, hey, let's do what this guy is saying. This is the plan. We're going to go this way. We're going to do this to fix the problem. Anytime somebody says that, that's a false prophet. The other gods have been changed in our modern era into a concept. Gods are Baalim, they're masters. It doesn't have to, we don't have to see that entity over us as a spiritual entity for it to be one. If your Baal, if your master is media, then your master is media. If your master is your boss, and he runs the show and calls all the shots, and I'm talking about in your life, if there's doing what your master says as far as your job, then there's letting him rule over your decisions as a man or a woman. And that's what we're referring to here. Let us go after other gods. The gods that you have not known, and let us serve them. Now also, we are talking about those deities, and I'm trying to translate for you. The deities that we went over in the Asherah study, there are thousands of them. And what took me a long time, the reason I'm explaining this to you is because the answers to where all of those gods came from and what they actually mean comes from the book of Enoch. And I have spent a decade chewing on and questioning if the narrative in the book of Enoch is meant to be part of the biblical story and what that means if it does. And before you can even qualify that, you have to go, okay, the writer of this book, in the context of this book, whoever wrote it, is this what he's saying to do? Is he saying don't go after other gods, other masters? Is he giving you signs and wonders to prove it? And is he remaining true to the precepts and concepts taught in this book? The rules handed down, the rules of the covenant that were given. Boil it down to what Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself and love the Lord your God with all your heart. That's the basic covenant that no man or woman who tries to lead you or spirit will break. And if they try to lead you outside of loving God and loving your neighbor, obviously you're going to go deeper into that. That's the surface level. That's layer one. The deeper you get in the relationship, the deeper you understand and learn how to go down and actually meet the needs of your fellow man and God. Initially, it's going to be just a, yes, I agree with you. And then you're going to learn more over time what he wants. That's the whole concept of the marriage covenant in the Bible. It's, I'm going to start with these few things that I want you to do. And that's just to keep from defiling yourself. And and that's what Acts 15 is all about. These are the things that people need to do to not defile themselves so that they can learn the covenant and get deeper and deeper. And the whole concept of the covenant is to get blessed. The concepts of the covenant are the spiritual laws of nature. That when you follow these rules, life naturally goes easier. You are naturally more fruitful. You're naturally more wealthy. You're drawing life in, and life is coming out. Whereas the inverse of this is not loving your neighbor and not loving God, is death flows out of you. That is the basic tenet, the simplest test for if a person or a way of life is of God or of man. If it's of God, it is going to exude life. It is going to draw people to it, like David. The power that David had that Saul didn't have, that Saul was jealous of, was that David drew people to his side and rallied them and brought them like to this valiant state of, I can do it because we're with you. That is life. That is exuding the covenant. We're not talking about a couple rules where you go, yes, I do this, and I do this, and I do this. No, those rules bring you to a place where you can exude life. The rules teach you how not to offend your fellow man and how not to offend God. And the whole Bible is, look at Cain and Abel. Cain offended God. And God came to him straight up. He wasn't mad. He just went, Cain came to him. He was mad that God was offended. And God said, no, just do it the way I asked you to do, and I'll be happy. I didn't not accept your sacrifice because I don't like you. I didn't accept your sacrifice because I asked for something else. And you gave me what you wanted to give me. So try again, give me what I asked for, and you're good. And what does Cain do? He gets jealous and kills his brother because God was happy with him. Instead of just fixing his attitude and doing what God asked him to do. Religion is the exact same way. When God has laid out a specific way that he wants it, that says, this makes me happy. And we go, well, I like these holidays more because they make me happy. And that should make you happy too. And God goes, no, I'm not accepting it. Christmas, Easter, Lent, you name it. All of the holidays that stem from these ancient fertility sex cults are rejected. And they offend God. They offend him. We cannot just slap Jesus' name on it and call it good. It's not how it works. He asked us to celebrate him on specific days, in specific ways. And when Jesus came, he mirrored that perfectly and kept those feasts in specific ways and told us to copy him exactly as he did it. And then Paul said, I want you to imitate me like I'm imitating Christ. That wasn't just loving people. That was the whole package. We need to love people and follow the covenant and keep the feasts and ignore the pagan feasts. Because what I've learned through studying all these religions is all of the pagan feasts center on one thing. And that is the celebration of the death of mankind. And why? Because I have asked myself my whole life, why are these celebrations so important for the world? Why are they so dead, and why is it everywhere if it doesn't mean anything? And if you see God saying don't do it, and the whole world is doing it, you've got to ask why. Because everybody says, well, it's not that big of a deal. Christmas, for instance. I hate to harp on Christmas because I'm going to get all kinds of backlash. And I'm not trying to harp on it. I have a lot of amazing friends and family that I respect that celebrate Christmas. So it's hard sometimes to come and say what needs to be said for fear of offending the people that believe and do these things. Because by no means is offense meant. But the point is, these things, whether we know it or not, are serving the spirits that God told us not to serve. And the brilliance of it is that we don't even know that. We were taught our entire lives that these things are what God asked for us. And that is why I present this with the utmost level of grace. I have gone through the process of learning what I shouldn't do my whole life as well. And when someone points out something and says, we're not supposed to be doing this, the concept is not, at least it shouldn't be, as a castigation or an affront. It's when King Josiah read the Torah scroll and realized how off they were, he tore his robes and he wept. And he went and he did everything he could to make restitution. And he pointed the finger around, starting with himself, and said, guys, we have messed up. We need to do better. We have ruined the covenant. We have ruined our birthright. We have ruined our inheritance. It's the prodigal son. He wakes up in the pig field and goes, I've lost everything. maybe if I slink back to my Father's house, maybe he will give me mercy and let me be a servant. He doesn't even expect to be a son anymore. When somebody points to these things, especially when I do it, I'm not pointing at the people doing it. I'm not pointing at people for believing it, because I understand it has taken me a decade of hard digging to learn what they mean. I know how hard it is because none of us understand it. What I'm trying to present is we need to understand it so that we'll stop doing it. It's not stop doing it and then you'll get it. It's, guys, like, listen and just attune your ears and ask God to tell you what it means. And he will. Just open yourself up to the possibility. Because at the end of the day, all that we do in religion, whether we're Christian, whether we're Muslim, whether we are Jewish, whether we're Wiccan or Satanist, individually we choose our religion because we believe that we are doing what is right. And the whole point of all of humanity is all of us should be following that path of learning what is right. No matter where you are on the path, no matter what you believe, that should be what holds us all together. What is right? I'm not attacking individuals. I'm attacking the spirit that is leading people into these things, making them believe that things that are wrong are right. And if we can just think about it and read, because that's what the Bible was always meant to do. It's to look at it and learn what's right and what's wrong so that we can stop if we're wrong and we can keep going if we're right. It's just a constant polishing of ourselves. So, circling back, everything, all of it means God wants undevoted devotion. He wants a pure and spotless bride. All of the baptisms, it's back in the original first century time, when someone was baptized, this is according to Dr. Michael Heiser, it went with it a renunciation of Satan and all of his angels and anything to do with Satan. So think about the irony of this. If we go through that baptism process and we get born again and we get born into the faith, and Satan can convince us that all of the things that God told us not to do, because they're affiliated with Satan, his enemy, and we do them routinely, which is, and these holidays aren't just fun days. They are renewals of covenants. They are renewal of, on a yearly basis, of our covenant with death. That's what they all point back to. They point back to the moment that we died. And Satan tells us, if you do this, you'll be successful. You'll have life. And God says, no, if you do that, you'll die. If you do this, you'll have life. And he's just saying, just do this. Just do this. Go this way. The whole Bible is about the sheep being led astray into the slaughterhouse, even by their very shepherds, which is exactly what Zechariah was referring to, and Jesus came to exemplify. He was the shepherd that came to lead people to life, and they killed him for it, because we love our death. And not only did they kill him for it, they bought the parcel of land that was in the land of Benjamin, in the valley of Ben Hinnom, where they would sacrifice their children. So they took, all these religions are not innocent. There is still blood spilled over these days. There are still sacrifices, human sacrifices, going on these high days by the elites running our governments. And when we celebrate the day and have our Christmas ham and send our money to the priests who sold us that ham, and we make our table and deck it out and put the images of Asherah and Ashtoreth and Baal all over our house, we're inviting that spirit to marry us. And if it doesn't matter if we understand what it means, the whole Bible is trying to explain this is what it means. If you do it, you're enacting a spiritual covenant with that entity. And all God is asking you to do is do what Ruth did. You leave that behind and you go find Boaz. The woman at the well that had had 5 husbands. That's what he's asking her to do. These 5 nations that you've married, Babylon, Persia, Assyria, Rome, he was pointing to the nations that Israel had been subservient to and entered into contracts with. When we enter these contracts on a spiritual level, it's exactly like if we enter them on a physical level. And these contracts are offering our children to these spirits. And look at what we have today. We have enacted, we've gone into these covenants and we've gotten deeper and deeper into it. And we are losing our children. Their genders are being altered. They're being raised by the system. They're being taught socialism. They're being murdered. Literally murdered. And poisoned. And kidnapped. And sacrificed. And we are still selling them to this spirit. It looks completely different on the surface, but the religion has led to the same thing. So what I'm trying to point out to you is these contracts in this book are still in effect. And where we are right now in America is prophesied all through this book. So let me explain a concept that's going to be really important. And I will add light to it as we get deeper. I won't prove it here now. But America contains the majority, if not... America contains the majority of the lost tribes of Israel. You can trace them back from the Assyrian dispersion from about 3 years after they disappeared. And they ended up all the way up in Britain and the United Kingdom. And guess what? They ended up coming over to America in droves. All of those European nations and the Germanic nations, won't go into details, but it was a mass migration all the way north when I don't want to get off on a tangent. Everything that has happened in the coming to America has been fulfillment of these prophecies. And only when you understand that can you understand what is happening today. The things going on, the contracts being signed by our governments under our very noses, and we're saying nothing, is prophesied. The Assyrian that comes against Jerusalem is prophesied in Isaiah to boast that he took all of the nations of the earth like eggs out of a nest and no one made a peep. That is today. That is literally happening and no one is saying a word about it. The governments of the earth are being owned more and more by one small collective. And I can point the finger exactly at that small collective. We need to get wise to the covenants being laid out here. What we're seeing, I have to show you, before I show you, I have to read a passage, because this is what my whole mission revolves around. Jeremiah chapter 6. Flee for safety, O people of Benjamin, from the middle of Jerusalem. Blow the trumpet in Tekoah. Tekoah means shofar. And raise a signal on Bet Hakarim. That means the vineyard, the house of the vineyard. For disaster looms out of the north, and great destruction. The lovely and delicately bred I will destroy. The daughter of Zion. The daughter of Zion refers to God's people wherever they are. Now, there are, since the New Covenant, there are two groups. There are blood Israelite descendants, and there are covenanted Gentiles who are brought into that family. So when I talk about the people of Israel, I'm not saying that you have to be of the genetic stock to be included in the covenant. I can do a whole study on that if you want. But ultimately, as soon as the new covenant existed, although even before that, look at Rahab, for instance. She was not a blood Israelite. But what she did showed faith in their God, which made her covenanted with him, and therefore one of them. It was never meant to be a blood thing. I mean, Rahab was in the bloodline of Yeshua. So was Ruth, the Moabitess. It's not about the bloodline. The whole point was the bloodline was supposed to pass that inheritance in spiritual covenant. That's what Paul was referring to. It wasn't the physical blood of Abraham he was passing down. It was the spiritual blood of the covenant that started with Abraham meeting God with the fiery pot. And God started that covenant saying, if you will do what I'm telling you and go and take this land, then I will give it to you. But you have to cleanse it and not make it worse. And that goes back to the Garden of Eden. God was giving Abraham the mission of cleansing Eden. And Abraham took that covenant. And God said, I will make sure that your inheritance, your descendants, continue that covenant on until earth is healed. So the question is, what was the problem, even in Abraham's time, in Noah's time? What was it specifically? What was the covenant that Adam made with the serpent that broke our inheritance? That made it so that God had to covenant with Abraham and send them back in to reclaim that. And then obviously they didn't reclaim it, just like Adam didn't claim it in the first place. So they came in, just like Adam went into the garden, and he served the serpent by obeying him and eating his fruit. Israel served the serpent by going into Canaan instead of wiping it out, marrying it, eating the fruit, sacrificing their children, doing all of the barbaric acts, the cannibalism and the sex rituals that went along with it. These aren't innocent holy days. They are utterly abominable. And they're being dressed up and painted as pretty on the surface. And if you look at things like the Sound of Freedom, now you understand what's going on in the background. The Spirit's operating that whole function. It's pretty for us so that we buy it. But it's not a pretty concept. It is all connected, every single piece. Look at what Jonathan Cahn has been saying. For 20, 30 years now, he has been telling America, if you continue to sacrifice your children to Molech, there's going to be judgment. There's going to be destruction. There's going to be invasion. There's going to be famine. And every single time he's pointed out what we're doing wrong on a contractual basis, it all boils down to murdering our children. That's what all of these religions have always pointed to. And as America gets more steeped in these pagan holidays and pagan rituals, and more steeped in consumerism, and more steeped in how pretty things look on the surface, and more steeped in media and social media, the more we engage in death, castration of children, little boys, the sexualization of children, pedophilia in the streets. Come on, people. And it all starts with sacrificing our children. If you'll do it in the womb, you'll do it at every stage up to that point. If you think that you can get a better rap out of this devil by giving him your kid, you do it. It looks different. We don't literally take them to an altar and hand them to a priest anymore. Very often, but it happens. It doesn't look the same on the surface. It doesn't look like a priest. Often it looks like somebody else. It doesn't look like an altar. But we're taking that child, we're taking his autonomy or her autonomy, and we're putting it on an altar. And we're taking it away from them. If we're changing their gender, that's exactly what we're doing. We are making it so that they can never bear offspring. We are sacrificing their entire generations to this spirit of insanity. It is the spirit of death. And we are just watching it and doing nothing about it. Blow the trumpet in Tekoah. Sound the alarm. Destruction comes from the north. That means both up above, from heaven, and in the north. What's in the north of America? Come on, Canada. With a 68-mile land bridge from Russia. Now, I can't tell you that anything is happening except for I did intel, and I learned a certain way of thinking when I was there. When you see all the signs of judgment, and every single time where we've gotten to, through COVID, through the pandemics, through the government takeovers, through the inflation, has been the first plague in Revelation, or the first horseman, the white rider, and the beginnings of the red horseman. And when the red horseman comes, which is war, which also ironically is the same color of Russia and China, and you know that biblically destruction comes from the north every single time. That is always the way God does it. And you look at Mount Hermon in Israel, in the very north, it was affiliated with those gods. So the spirits that are running these nations are running the nations literally in a spiritual pattern, where if we serve those gods, we also serve their king. And that is why God keeps giving Israel over to the servitude and destruction, because when we serve the God, we serve the king who the God gave power to. And these gods are real. They're not just... If you look at the works of people like Dr. Michael Heiser, I highly recommend this book, The Unseen Realm. He also has another amazing book, Reversing Hormone. Now, I'm just going to summarize some of his principles, because these tie the whole picture together. And I'm sorry if this seems like a ramble. The biggest problem we have is that the body of knowledge needed to piece this together is unfathomable. And it has taken me 15 plus years to connect enough dots to have a iota of an idea of what's going on. And because we're every man for himself, we're all out there on our own doing our own thing, knowledge and understanding towards these things comes incredibly slow. That's why we were supposed to draw together as tribes. What one of us learned, we could relay to the other one quickly. And as we're all slowly learning all of these things and slowly figuring out how to read the signs and the times and the contracts and the covenants, we're burning up. In a very real and physical sense, the famine is starting because under our very noses, our governments have openly told us that they worship Baal. Look at the Birmingham games. They happened in last year, 2022. Britain brought 72 nations, all of the Commonwealth nations, to pay homage to this giant raging bull that they had carted out onto the scene. And the bull was standing at the foot of their depiction of the Tower of Babel, with a mixture of displays and flags and floods and fires on it. And when this bull comes out, he's raging mad, just like the beast in Revelation. But then, a woman approaches the bull with a crystal, and she offers him the crystal, and the bull is pacified, and then everybody bows down and worships the bull, while this woman climbs on top of it and rides this beast. Now, do you think that this was an accidental imagery? If you do, you're insane. The only question is, who put this imagery together and why? Now, I'll tell you who oversaw this event. This was right after the Queen had died, and while King Charles was still technically Prince Charles, but had not been crowned yet. King Charles oversaw this event. And Dr. Tim Cohen did a great breakdown of the imagery and the significance and the spiritual picture being painted in this event. If they do this, if the people in charge present us with this ceremony publicly, whether we understand it or not, we are still viable for going along with it. So when they tell us we are openly worshiping Baal and serving this raging bull, the golden calf from Exodus, people, the bull that Israel set up at the base of the mountain while waiting for Moses to go up and get the covenant. God had just brought them out of Egypt, and they were there for 400 years learning the religion of Egypt. And they thought Moses died on the mountain. So they go, here's an idea. We'll replace Moses with one of these gods. Boom, perfect. Because then God can talk to this calf, and the calf can talk to us, and we're good. That's the thinking there. That's the language in that passage, if you understand what they believed. Now, you have to actually be able to understand what the Egyptians believed to decipher that. So, this is one of my sources, Exploring Religion in Ancient Egypt. Because to understand what covenant those Hebrews were making at that moment, you have to understand what they believed. And according to this, and I've gone over this in my Asherah study, this is on page 91 of this book if you guys are interested. On this model, the sacred space is a crucible for a special kind of alchemy, enabling earthly energy to pass to these invisible forces. Any sculpted image in these offering spaces may need to be consecrated, so you've got to do something to make it holy. You have to do something to make it now the representation of some spirit. But it seems that the carved image was never the object of worship. Instead, it provides a material core or focus to provide orientation for the offerer. So it's giving the offerer a thing to look at, to devote their energy to. So it's like a magician's wand. It is a thing focusing energy. It's not an actual entity. It never was seen as an actual entity. It doesn't matter if we think it's an entity or not. It's taking our energy and it's directing it to an image. That's important. It provides a material focus to provide orientation for the offerer, and perhaps a physical object space where the invisible force could collect the energies being offered in the form of food, drink, or incense. And I'm going to add blood to that. One more quote on page 95. According to the writings and depictions summarized here, at least one person would enter the sanctuary located at the back of the temple. They would open the doors of the shrine that concealed the image that enabled the deity to be present, and they would present offerings. So they believed that the image allowed a certain spirit to dwell there. So let me ask you this. Why? No, I won't ask this as a question yet. Many times in Deuteronomy, it says do not bring an abominable thing into your home, or you, like it, will be set apart for destruction. So what he's telling you, and what we're going to connect this all back to, is each one of these images is a representation of Adam's dead body. It is a spiritual connecting point to Adam being dead. We're carrying a dead body with us. So therefore, all of the curses in the Bible related to uncleanness from a dead body are on us. And you know how you cleanse yourself from that? You literally separate yourself from it, wash yourself with water on the 3rd and 7th day, and that's significant to Jesus' first coming on the 3rd day, and the 7th day at the end of creation, as we're cleansed and given our spiritual bodies. The flesh is gone. The circumcision on the 8th day is that same principle, the same concept of cutting away the flesh as part of a remembrance of the Spirit. What these idols are remembering is the spirit of Adam and his dead body. So even though it's not physically a dead body, in the spiritual sense, it is a dead body. So therefore, we incur all of the judgments of a dead body, specifically that God can't be in our presence until we cleanse it. Or should I say, we can't be in God's presence. Because here's the thing, God could come, but it would kill us. So he has to be at a distance until we start to cleanse ourselves. And he's giving us, that was the concept in the Garden of Eden. When they were kicked out of the garden, there was a little bit of distance. They weren't allowed in his Holy of Holies anymore. But he went to them and he said, this is what you need to do to get back in. And we didn't do it. We went the way of Cain. God told Cain the same thing he told Eve. This beast, the spirit that is telling you to be angry, that is an idol. That is a spiritual entity. Don't listen to it. Take dominion of it. It's crouching at the door. And Cain served it and killed Abel. He submitted to that wrath when God had given him a clear directive. This is all I want from you. You're fine. Adam and Eve, this is what I want from you. I want holy seed. I want godly offspring. Do you realize that Adam lost his divine nature before he bore God any pure seed? And that was why, or one of the reasons, that Jesus' coming was so miraculous and unexpected. Because God took defiled humanity and found a way to redeem mankind and take back our inheritance and take back our birthright and take back our invincibility, our immortality, which was given to us in the garden. We were the image of God on earth. He made everything, and then he handed us the keys. How do we know that? He said, name the animals. Whatever Adam names it, that's what I'm going to call it. That was complete dominion. There was nothing on this earth that was not supposed to submit to Adam, including the serpent. What the serpent knew was he's a spiritual being. He's a heavenly being, a glorified being, the second in command to God himself in heaven. And he's angry because God just made a man out of dirt and expects this spirit to serve it and take care of it. There are scriptures all over the place of angels serving the needs of mankind. Man was made as the express image of God. And Jesus reclaimed that express image of God. And don't get me wrong on that. Not to cause confusion. Yeshua, Jesus, is the elect one. The Son of God. The one with the Father. He's not just a prophet. He is the express image of God, as Paul said. And he always was. He's eternal. So don't get me wrong when I say But what happened was God sent him down in the form of flesh, in the lineage of the man that was promised to redeem mankind. And he took that mantle, he recollected the lost inheritances so that he could dish them out at will to anyone who wanted to covenant with him. And this is what we've been missing. No one has ever taught us that every successive generation in the Bible had to initiate by their own free will into the covenant of their ancestors. And there was always a king or a prophet or a leader or a priest who explained the terms of the covenant and confirmed it before the people and said, this is what I'm doing. Look what Joshua said. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. You guys do it too. So what they're doing is they're being an example. That's all I'm referring to here. And obviously that all pointed to Jesus, Yeshua, being the ultimate example of I am fully covenanted with the Father to the point of death. And that is what gives me my life. That will give you your life if you copy me. But we're not copying him. We're celebrating death. Everything in our society celebrates death. And the call of Jeremiah is to burn it. The call of Paul is to burn it. Build for yourselves a house made of precious metals and precious stones, so that when the fire comes, your house will stand. But if you build it out of wood and straw and sticks, when the fire comes, you will be saved, but escaping out of the flames without your house. It's the same concept of put on the garment so that you're not found naked. No one has taught us this covenant. No one has even taught us that we need to confirm it. You know what we're taught? You come every Sunday and you give me your tithe. And you come up to this altar and you raise your hand and you say, Jesus, come into my heart. And you're saved and you don't have to do anything because Jesus loves you. It is a bastardization of the gospel. And may those men be cursed. Because they are leading people astray, just like the rabbis and the Pharisees did. And Jesus says, you put a yoke on them 10 times heavier than your own. And make them more sons of the devil than yourself. That yoke that they're putting on you is not the biblical yoke. Their yoke is, I want all your tithe, I want all your time, I want your family, I want your sons. I want you to spend your Mondays and your Wednesdays and your Sundays and your Thursdays working for the church. I want you to give us your money. Pay our salaries. Look at my big house that you paid for. How is that being a shepherd? How is that a glorified career? You're robbing people. This is another verse in Jeremiah where it says this, I am angry with my shepherds because they have torn off the hooves of my sheep. They have ripped them to shreds, and then they say, praise God, I am rich. If that is not the pastors in our American church, I don't know what is. And that spirit is gotta go. That spirit is killing us. Because we, the people who think that they are given authority by God, are led astray because they're lying to you. And if you compare their words to Deuteronomy chapter 13 and 1 John chapter 4, and you ask yourself if that spirit is the spirit of Elohim, the spirit of life, the spirit of regeneration, the spirit of generosity. And if it's not, you call them to account. Because the time of passivity is over. If we don't start standing in some form of judgment of what's happening, are we not supposed to be witnesses? Are we not supposed to call out evil? Absolutely do it with love. Absolutely. You don't smack someone in the face when you have the ability to use a relationship to help somebody. I never advocate for warfare when you can use relationship. But what I am saying is you follow the principles of, I believe it's in Timothy, where the principles for how to call out a brother are laid out. And it is always centered around love. But if they don't listen to you, you bring more and more people into it. If you go to somebody, say your pastor is the leader of your church, or specifically your religious leader, because this is something where if they're your religious leader, they owe it to the community to follow the rules of this book. And if they're doing something detrimental to somebody else in the group, in the community, and someone in the community comes and says, hey, what you're doing is actually hurting people, and that pastor does not do their absolute best to understand that concept and make it better, if they shove it under the rug, if they use fear tactics on you, if they threaten you, if they do anything other than, and they may say, oh my goodness, how do I make it better? But then you watch, you don't just listen to their words, you watch their fruit. You will know a tree by its fruit, not its leaves. If that, its leaves or its words. So these pastors, if their words are, I'll make it better, I'll make it better, I'll make it better, I'm so sorry, and then nothing happens, that's manipulation. That is abuse. That is lying. And that makes them a false prophet. And that removes them from office. And if you sit under that leadership knowing that they are a false prophet, then you're part of the problem. We cannot keep just going along with it anymore. It is time to put our foot down and say no more. Because if we don't, our entire nation is doomed. Our kids are doomed. There will be more famine. There will be more death. This warning is every facet of our life. It has to start somewhere. We have to have a standard and a boundary. And yes, we have to love people too. Look at Abraham. He kept the covenant flawlessly, according to what he was commanded to do. No one can deny that. And I'm not saying he didn't sin. I'm saying he followed. Okay, let me correct myself. Flawlessly does not mean he didn't make mistakes, like with Ishmael and Hagar. What I mean by flawlessly is when God corrected him, he repented. When David was corrected, he repented. All of us will make mistakes in trying to follow this covenant. But when God corrects us, usually through a person in our lives, and it's going to humble you, because you're not going to like that somebody who you consider to be smaller or less significant than you is telling you what you should be doing. If you can't humble yourself to that, you shouldn't be leading. And your leadership will be revoked over time. Each one of us is supposed to be a king and a priest of our house. But before a king, we should be a priest. We should be serving. We should be cooking. We should be cleaning. We should be taking care of the needs of our wives. We should be spending time with our kids and teaching them. We are not just the providers of our house. We aren't just called to take our money and throw it on the table. We are called to be priests first. That means healers. That means if somebody is hurting, physically or emotionally, we tend to that need. If you are doing something that is hurting someone, you tend to that need. If you are noticing that a discipline tactic you tried on your kid is causing mental damage, it is incumbent on you as the priest of your house to reevaluate and see if there's a better way to get your point across and to get the message through. Because I bet you money, if your kid is testing you, he's testing you for a reason. And that's because you've given him reason to test. I'm getting off on a tangent. So my point being, this religion of Egypt takes over every facet of our lives. Although we think it's just couple holidays. And you look back to King Charles leading the Commonwealth in a ceremony marrying Baal and the mission of the Tower of Babel. And then you look at where King Charles's allegiances are. And they're with the UN and the Global Green Effort and the World Economic Forum, the one global government, which people poo-poo and say conspiracy theory, but hear me out. Does the Bible not predict a singular global government? Does it not predict a mark that does not allow you to buy food or water or anything unless you have it? Let me tell you something. If you follow the contracts of the Bible from Adam, the inheritance that Adam lost, the inheritance that the mantle, the robes that were given to Adam symbolized his inheritance, his earth. And that can be verified because later on through the Bible, whenever a cloak or a robe is referenced, it's referring to their land, their portion. Look at the Jeroboam and the Rehoboam story in, where is that? Kings? Anyway, Jeroboam, first or second Kings, maybe both. You look at the Jeroboam and Rehoboam story. The prophet was told to go out there with a cloak, a new cloak, tore it into 12 pieces, and he gave Rehoboam 2 for the sake of David, the tribe of Judah and Benjamin, and Jeroboam got 10. Jesus' cloak was never divided. It was cast lots for. And this is incredibly important because you can trace his contract, just like Joseph. When Joseph was sold to the Ishmaelites, his inheritance was sold to the Ishmaelites. He was sold for 20 shekels of silver, the amount, according to Leviticus, that a young man should sell for. When he was sold from the Ishmaelites to Egypt, his inheritance was sold to Egypt. This is validated by the fact that he was given a double portion, though he wasn't the firstborn. And the validation of this is the way it all lined up, because Jacob was supposed to... Whew, jeez. My dog scared me. Oh, where was I? Inheritance. Jesus' cloak was not split. His cloak symbolized the recollected land of Israel. The reabsorbed. He took that cloak of Jeroboam and Rehoboam, the divided house of Judah and Israel, and symbolically put them together like the staff of Zechariah, the 2 sticks. His bones were never broken. His robes were never torn. He was pierced and he was crucified, but he remained intact, just like his land. Now, if you trace the contracts made from Abraham, or from Adam, through to Abraham, through Jacob, through Isaac, they are passing down a spiritual contract of ownership. Though they have to walk out the process of actually getting that ownership. So the laws and the rules that were given were simply just the terms of the contract. And the whole point was, even if you make a mistake, I'm going to make sure it happens. The terms of the contract are on me. But I will bring your people back to those terms of the contract every time you make a mistake. You go through the book of Judges. Every time Israel broke the contract, God sent them through a period of slavery and servitude until they understand how they broke that contract, repented, and they were given back their autonomy. We can take No, we can be given our autonomy back. We don't have to take it. Jesus did not advocate for taking our inheritance back. He advocated for not bowing and not submitting while remaining autonomous and respectful. There is a beautiful balance to that. And he painted the picture. You don't have to bow to these people. You don't have to serve them. But you have to show them dignity and respect as human beings, even if you fundamentally disagree with them. That is what Jesus painted for the religious leaders. He did not bow to them. He did not listen to them when they added laws. You're not allowed to drink alcohol. Christians, Baptists, Pentecostals, anyone? Or, you're not allowed to have caffeine. Mormons? He did not allow additions to the laws of freedom. You're not allowed to pick weed on the Sabbath. But he didn't break the Sabbath. He didn't do anything unlawful. What he did was he broke the doctrines of men and how men believed they were meant to be carried out. But all the while they're nitpicking these little laws and these regulations and these rules, they're taking women and trying to stone them for adultery. And searching out everybody's sins, everybody's death, trying to kill people. Exactly what Saul did before he was redeemed. He was searching for death. Again, the whole gospel is to seek life. The Garden of Eden. That should be in our heart. It should be in our home. It should be in our workplace. It should be everywhere. But just because we seek peace does not mean we shouldn't be ready with a sword to fight evil. We should be ready to fight evil to protect what is good, to protect what we love, to protect those who can't protect themselves. Not like what Samson did, because they got on the wrong side of his attitude. Samson went out for revenge. And that was the whole point. He was made a judge. And all he did was he got obsessed with revenge. We can't be obsessed with revenge. We need to seek out life whenever possible. That's the whole gospel. And all of the pagan religions celebrate death. All of the feasts in the Bible celebrate life. And what you're celebrating is what you'll copy. And what you'll copy is what you'll do. And what you do is what you are. So if you're copying the images given to us by the serpent, you become the serpent. If you copy the image of man in his divinity, then you respect every man in front of you. And you disrespect the false gods, the images that men expect you to bow to. See, you can respect and honor a fellow man as another divine representation of God. And respect that God made that man, and that man is carrying out God's plan upon you. So if you bring judgment upon yourself from God, he's going to send men to oppose you. That has always been the law. It's always been the rule. And the moment you respect and honor the men that are in authority while standing your own ground and refusing to bow to the gods, that is when amazing things and miracles happen. This book is so much more than you're being told. I need you guys' help. I'm sharing this partially because I am digging at something I don't quite understand yet. I don't understand exactly where we're going with this. And the reason I'm so slow in getting these videos out is because I don't. And I want to have something... These videos need to have a point. I'm not just rambling about some things that I learned. I am trying to follow the scarlet thread. And it is all through the Bible. The thread of the covenant. And if you follow it all the way through, you get to right here. And where we are right here is on the brink of disaster. And it's on the brink of the most amazing thing you've ever seen. To reference Lord of the Rings, after Gandalf dies, Galadriel says, "Your fellowship stands upon the edge of a knife. Stray but a little, and it will fail." That is where we are. One more step in the wrong direction, and we're gone. There's no time to sit here and gab. There's no time to play games. There's no time to keep being offended at everyone for stupid stuff. It is time to sit down and dig in and figure out why we're still here. Because the promise all the way through the Bible is the moment you figure out what you did wrong and repent for it, I will forgive you and I'll bring you back to your inheritance. We have been disinherited. We have been sold. We are in debt. We don't own anything. We have lost everything. And Israel, when they went into exile, they went out naked and barefoot. We are, as a society, especially as America, becoming naked and barefoot. Barefoot is our inheritance. It is our spiritual ownership. And our cloak is our physical field. It is our land. The land, the Temple Mount, that was sold to David by Araunah, the Jebusite, was purchased by David for 50 shekels of silver, which is the same amount of silver that a grown man, according to Leviticus 26 or 7, should be sold for by a temple valuation. When Jesus was sold, he was sold for 30 shekels of silver, which is not only 20 shekels shy of the land that went with him. Because if you look at the book of Ruth, when Boaz was trying to marry Ruth, he had to go and engage a contract with the men of the city and say, and point out explicitly that whoever bought Naomi's field, the inheritance of her dead husband, had to produce offspring for that family, according to the law. And that was to keep each family in Israel, to keep their inheritance in the family, which is something we have lost today. None of us have family inheritances anymore. We have sold them, or our fathers have sold them, or our grandfathers sold them. Ultimately, we percolate down to a place where none of us have our inheritance. We are naked and barefoot. And Jesus, being sold for 30 shekels, was the price that a woman should be sold for. So not only is it not the price of the land, the land of Israel went with his sale. And when we sold him, we sold our land. And we gave, who did we sell it to? Who did Judas receive money from? The chief priests and rabbis, who have been trying to hide the fact that they killed him this entire time. The chief priests and the rabbis, who are still to this very day persecuting people if they know who Yeshua is. And the Christians have the audacity to point the finger at the Jews and say that they're not saved. They can't be saved. Because they've been lied to just like we've been lied to as Christians. Who has believed the greater lie is not a competition. We have both believed lies by our fathers. That is the prophecy in Isaiah. Ephraim will say, "We have inherited lies. Surely, let us go back and serve the Lord our God." The rabbis have been trying to hide the fact that they sold Yeshua for 2,000 years. And when they sold him, they sold his inheritance. And his inheritance was the Temple Mount that David bought, his father. So that Temple Mount that sits in the ownership of the United Nations, yes, look it up, which was given to them by the UK, who's the literal offshoot of Rome, is following that contract through to the current holder. Whoever's holding the robe is the guy who done it. They are holding the cloak of Joseph, the cloak of Jesus, the inheritance and the land. They are the spirit of the Antichrist, without a doubt. They meet every specification. They are taking dominion of the earth using his cloak. And let me prove it to you. On September 19th and 20th, the UN is holding what they call the SDG Summit. Look it up. And they are calling for the global governmental leaders to sign a 7-year treaty that will bring us into 2030 with our global green goals met, which is, if you want to boil it down, kill everybody so that they stop breathing their poisonous carbon dioxide. We are on the cusp of what is most likely the Daniel 9 covenant with the many. And it will be for 7 years. Now, I have to point this out because a lot of people see the parallels of most of Daniel 9 is referring to Jesus and Yeshua and his count of weeks up to the crucifixion. And they apply the fact, and I see a lot of merit in this, but there's one problem with this concept that I cannot get over. They say that when Yeshua made the new covenant, that was the 7-year covenant that he confirmed, and that's proven by the fact that he was cut off in the middle in the 3.5 years of his reign, or of his ministry. Let me point out that there are 2 major flaws with that. First off, the belief that he had a 3.5-year ministry did not originate until Rome took over the church, and they seeded that in there so that they could say that the tribulation had already happened. So that they inferred that his ministry was 3.5 years, but there is no proof of that. There's actually more proof that he only served for 1 year in his ministry. And his ministry was to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. What he did through that year, the feasts that he confirmed, those feasts are covenant dinners. He confirmed his covenant in that year with the Father and showed us, as sons of Adam, how also to confirm that covenant with the Father. And the first rule of that was he did not bow down to Satan or keep any of his holy days. This covenant that is being made for 7 years is that covenant. And the other reason that cannot be the case, referring to Jesus signing the 7-year covenant with the many, is because his covenant is not bound by time. There is no qualifier that it's for 7 years. It is an open-ended, limitless covenant for whoever will come into it. That is the covenant. The covenant we're looking at in Daniel 9:27. It is very cryptic language. It bounces around between the Messiah and him as the anti-Messiah, to where the verbiage is confusing and it's difficult to understand, and that's all of the prophecies are. You have to understand what they're pointing to. This 7-year covenant points to the 7 days surrounding walking around Jericho. It points to the 7 years that David fled from Saul. Saul was mad. He was angry because God chose David and anointed David and said Saul's king will fall. What we're looking at, this global system, is Saul's kingdom. And it is bound and determined to fall. So what this warning is do not sign a covenant. Do not go along with the covenant with Saul's kingdom. David fled from Saul for 7 years. If we have to flee from this for 7 years in order to be given ownership of it, so be it. We will be given everything. If this covenant goes through and it is signed, we have 7 years to rebuild Israel and Jerusalem. That is a profound truth. And it is happening almost definitively. The reason it has to be so definitive is because all of the other signs align as well. 2 or 3 witnesses will confirm a matter. You've got the alignments in the heavens. In September 17th of 2017, you had the Revelation 12 sign of the woman clothed with the sun, with the moon at her feet, and the serpent under her feet, trying to devour the child that was born. That alignment happened just as a feast was happening. I believe it was Feast of Trumpets. Then 3 months after that, there was a massive eclipse that covered the span of the United States, the land that Jacob's descendants inhabited. That message was coded for us, our land. Jerusalem, as it now stands, is the capital. It is the religious center of America, and it will fall if we let these covenants with the enemy stand. It is our job as the people, under not only a spiritual sense, but on an American sense, by the Constitution of the United States. Let me just read you this stanza. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government. That mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms of which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty, to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Here are some of the allegations against the king when they wrote these. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasion on the rights of the people. When our governments continue to ignore our rights and our needs and make covenants against our will and print money against our will and create inflation against our will and send our money to every other country against our will, and when we bring our affronts to the government and we tell them to stop, and they threaten to take our guns away, that is a dangerous government. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected. We have fake elections now. Everybody knows it. You can say anything you want. Everybody knows that the moment we brought in digital voting, we completely reduced the voting system to a sham. It has been every single country in the world who has switched to these electric voting machines has fallen to this communist regime, and it is taking over the world by storm. And the prophecy of the Assyrian coming and taking the world, one nation at a time, like eggs out of a nest, and nobody even makes a peep. That is the prophecy that we are seeing happen before our very eyes, and nobody is making a peep. He has returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. Sound familiar, people? He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers. Let's talk about all the IRS agents they've been adding to take more of your money after they're printing you into the poorhouse. Swarms of officers. Now, this is also referring to the locusts in Revelation. We're not talking about physical locusts, most likely, although that is not out of the question. The reference is locusts, the body of government that is devouring everything that you work for, is the locust. And if you look at the root word, it actually directly relates to Gibeon, the domed building that represents a government structure. That is in the word itself. This is not a stretch by any imagination. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies, militarizing the police, without the consent of our legislatures. He is affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. That is the covenant that they are signing us up for. That, and there's more. The taxes. It's unbelievable. But we're watching it happen, and we're not making a peep. And they know that we're not making a peep. So this covenant being signed, September 19th and 20th, for 7 years, with the whole world, to get us to the 2030 agenda, which I can show you mathematically and biblically, actually lines up flawlessly with the biblical prophecies. Look at the famine of Egypt. Joseph's dream was that there would be 7 years of good and 7 years of famine. We have had, it will be from the sign of the woman of Revelation 12 on September 7th, 2017 to the current is 7 years. That was our years of plenty. There was another eclipse crossing America the other direction on April 8th of 2024. Now this is significant because it is almost 7 years apart from the original, but it is actually 6 years, 6 months, 6 weeks, and 6 days from that first sign. So you're seeing a blending of the 666 number with the spiritual significance of the sign in the heavens, and the timing, and the place where God has put his people. And you're drawing an X over it, which is symbolic of an Aleph, the first and the last. But in the occult, it's significant of death. X marks the spot. That's where they're striking. Everything aligns. So if you follow that through, according to the Essene calendar, 2025 was the what is it? The last Jubilee, the year 6,950. All of creation was given in 7 days. A day is 1,000 years. The pattern of the Garden of Eden, the pattern of creation being made in 7 days, refers to all of prophecy and all of history accomplishing within 7,000 years. And I know there are science nuts who are going to call me a kook. I don't care. The dating methods that we have are ridiculous. They are all over the charts. Our world ages like 8 billion years a day. They keep changing the times on us. And we think, oh yeah, well, 20 million years ago, we were just floating around in some metamorphic goo. Come on, people. The timelines are insane. the biblical timeline that we have lines up flawlessly with everything. So, if Jesus came to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord, and 2025 is the final jubilee to set the captives free, to give us final 50 years to bring us into the seventh day, the Sabbath of mankind, which gives us the 1,000-year reign at the end of it. It lines up absolutely beautifully. There are 6, on the 6th day Adam was made. On the 6th day, we will be made back into Adam, and we will be brought back into the garden to dwell with Yeshua the Messiah for 1,000 years under his reign, under his dominion as Adam number 2. It is all of prophecy combined in that nice little ball. So that'll be on the Jubilee year when Jesus proclaimed in, I believe it was John chapter 4. He read the passage in Isaiah. I have been anointed to bring good news, to release the captives, to preach good news to the lost. And when he read that passage, he cut it off in the middle of the passage, sat down, everyone looked at him. He said, "Today, these things are beginning to be accomplished before you." When King Charles was anointed King of England, and soon to be King of the world, he had that passage read at his coronation as he was taking kingship, claiming to be a descendant of the King of David, taking the throne of the United Nations, who owns the robe of Yeshua. And it gets worse. It gets even crazier. As I explained in my last video, he is leading up. He is the head guy at COP28, meeting in Dubai, where you have not only the world's tallest tower, symbolizing the place of the Tower of Babel, but you also have the World Covenant House, which is the blending of Judaism, Islam, and Catholicism. The iron and the clay, the feet of iron and clay in Daniel's or Nebuchadnezzar's vision. Iron being Rome, Catholicism. Clay being the Semitic nations, the Abrahamic faith. Islam, like it or hate it, they are the descendants of Abraham our father. They are our brothers too. The only thing that we should be fighting about is how to stop the thing trying to kill us. I will work with anybody under the faith of Abraham as long as they serve the same God as I serve. All the covenants are lining up. And as more proof, the Joseph story claims that God sent a famine on the land, and he used that famine to draw Joseph's brothers back to him to see if they were repentant after 2 years of famine. If this covenant is signed this year in 2023, the Jubilee year that the captives are set free is in 2025, which lines up flawlessly with this timeline. Because after Joseph met his brothers, he told them, there's still 5 years of famine. Go back to Canaan, get your father, and come back. And they rode out the famine in the best land of all of Egypt. That's what's going to happen. Not the same details. The famine is being sent to test which of Yeshua's brothers are repentant. In Zechariah, one of the final chapters, it's like 12, 13, or 14. He says, in that last day, I will send a spirit of supplication on my people, on Judah specifically, those who pierced their Messiah. And they will have a spirit of supplication, and they will mourn over him as if mourning for an only son. And truly, that's what it did. He is the only one that can give our inheritance back to us. And when he died, so did our sons, until we engage in his life. That's what the baptism is about. Not his death, his resurrection. His coming back as that new man and giving us a father that can give us an inheritance. Because up till now, our fathers have chosen the inheritance of death over and over and over and over. And we're finally at the point where we're being presented with the open covenant again. Are you going to create your covenant? Are you going to seal a covenant with the man of perdition? Or are you going to seal a covenant with the Son of David? I present to you an idea. And I don't know if this is the solution, but this is a solution that I have been presented with. So weigh it for yourself. In my time in the military, I learned to sit there and complain about a problem without a solution. Sorry for the language, but you're just bitching. There's no other way to convey that thought. There are a million people that will tell you everything wrong with our society. I'm presenting a solution. If you don't like my solution, I don't expect you to take it. All I want is for you guys, for all of us, to be talking about what the solution is. I don't care what the solution is, as long as it is not a breach of the covenant in the first place, and we're not going to some other entity to fix our problems, like that was what Israel kept getting dinged for. Every time they got in trouble, they would go to Egypt, or they'd go to Assyria, or they'd go to some other country to fix it for them. And God said, oh, you just made a covenant with them. I can't do anything till that covenant's up. What they're doing by issuing this new global covenant is annulling all of the previous covenants that they have signed us up for. It is giving us a small period of time. They're killing the system and freeing us, expecting that we are going to be so desperate for their help that we're going to run to them and sign this new covenant with them that has no end date. It has no terms, and it's irrecoverable. Once you sign up with this covenant, the mark of the beast, you're out. Your inheritance is gone forever. When this system crashes, we are free. Ruth was married until her husband died. Machlon was his name, and his name means weakness. Her sister was married to his brother, which means finality and death. So those two women were married to death. Adam, the original Adam. When he died, they were free to go and seek a contract with Boaz. When our contract is up, we are free to seek a covenant with David. The problem that Moses ran into on the mountain was when he was up there for 40 days, which is 40 Jubilees, which is 2,000 years. The one like Moses went up the mountain. And we all said, oh, he's dead. We'll just serve this calf instead. And he'll tell us what we should do. By following this system through, following their contracts, following their God, we are copying that action of marrying the golden calf at the foot of the mountain. If we had just waited a couple days more, Moses would have come down and would be blessed. But we've already married ourselves to the demon while he's getting the contract of how to receive his blessing. When Moses comes down from the mountain, he's not going to find me contracted with this golden calf. He's going to find me waiting, just like the virgins. And I'm doing my best to fill up with oil. That's what, we're not talking physical oil, although we should physically prepare. We're talking both. But on a deeper level, we need to be understanding. The way we get oil is this. Understanding it. Not knowing it. Understanding. We have to understand this. I don't care how many laws you keep. I don't care how much tithe you get. I don't care how many people go to your church. I don't care how much money your church makes. Actually, I do, because it kind of pisses me off. I care if we are learning how to engage in this contract. Because if we don't learn what it was that made our ancestors lose their inheritance over and over and over again, then we can't engage in the covenant. The new covenant is there, written in the blood of the Messiah, and none of us have engaged in it. You can't tell me we're in the new covenant. You read Jeremiah chapter 31, and you read Hebrews 8, which is a reiteration of the new covenant. That is the only place the new covenant is defined. One place in the Old Testament, one place in the New Testament. Almost none of those stipulations are in full effect. There are pieces of them here and there, yes, because the new covenant is in effect in certain people. But as a community, as a whole, as a people of Israel, both physically and spiritually, we are not initiated into the new covenant because we don't even know what it means. We cannot take part in a covenant that we don't understand. Let me know what you guys think. I feel an incredibly heavy burden. I am convinced something major is right on the cusp. And the thing that all of the judges and all of the prophets and all of the leaders, including Moses, did, the first thing that they did after hearing from God, was they went to the elders of Israel. And they started to get people engaged. We don't even have elders anymore. As a community, we haven't chosen elders who aren't selling us out to the system. Because the pastors across the globe have created 501c3 companies where they are beholden to the government to not say certain things, not teach certain things, and to tell people what they should be doing. They are propagandizing you on Sunday in your church behind the pulpit, and they're getting paid for it. And they're taking your money so that for the honor of being lied to. They are selling us this new age, new world, communist agenda. And they're saying, praise God, I am rich. That is not a leader. That is not an elder. The elders of Israel are going to bat for their people. Those are the people we need to get together and start connecting the dots as a community, as a people, and stop squabbling. Like I said, I don't care where you're from. I don't care what you believe, as long as you understand that we have the same enemy and the same God. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what gender you are. I don't care what race you are. I was in the Navy. I was a firefighter. We don't see anything except, can you do the job? Can you function in the position that you're in? And if you can't, we'll give you a new position. It has nothing to do with anything other than people should be in the position that they're good at. That's it. That's it. And we should all be able to agree on that. If our priests, our elected priests, are not good at being priests, don't go that way. We have a choice, people. We are meant to decide for ourselves what is good and what is right, and we are supposed to use this as the basis. And if the people teaching us are not using these foundations, they should not be teaching us. That's pretty much all I've got for now. I don't know if that was just a straight ramble fest, but this stuff is very, very hard to connect. Next time, I'm going to try to explain to you that these spiritual entities are real. Hauntings are real. Demonic oppression and possession is real. Giants are real. Reality is stranger than fiction, people. And we need to put our heads together, stop fighting, and play our hands as they're dealt us. Because that will teach us what we're supposed to do. First and foremost, we need to elect elders from every tribe. Each tribe, we may not be able to know what our ancestry is. And even if you're a Gentile and you're grafted in, you have a job. Each tribe had a job. It wasn't about blood. It was about function. We need to get the tribes together. The tribes and their stones are significant, and we can figure out. I've already been told. I am a Benjamite and I'm a Levite. My family is a blending of the two, in the same way that Yeshua was a blending of Levi and Judah. You can know your tribe as well. I can show you how to find it. I can show you how to ask the questions. We can be resurrected, just like Lazarus was. It is time. The people of Israel will stand on their 2 feet, according to Ezekiel 37. He commanded to the bones that the Spirit should breathe on it. And they came together and they made a loud tumult. And when he was commanded to prophesy that breath breathe into their lungs. And the flesh came upon them and they stood on their feet. A great multitude. That is Israel. That is us. The dead bones. We are on the cusp of waking up and breathing and repenting and entering into our inheritance. The cataclysms in front of us are meant to be scary. We need to follow the fear back to our source. The fear will lead us to our Father. Are you going to chase your Father into these covenants with death? Or is the fear going to lead you into covenant with the Son of David? If any of you doubt who the Son of David is, if any of you Jews have been lied to and believe that Yeshua can't be the Son of David, I challenge you, study it. The scriptures and the prophets all bear testament to Yeshua, Jesus, as the Messiah, the inheritor of all of the earth. And all we have to do is understand what we did wrong. He was sold for 20 shekels shy of what his land should have been sold for. We have to make right that wrong. We chose to marry death. We bought the land of the murdering of babies in exchange for him. We betrayed him on the deepest level. He who receives one of the least of these has received me. Numbers chapter 5 says that if anyone is cheated or shorted, that the principal value of that short change shall be multiplied by 1/5, and that amount should be given to the priest as an offering for atonement, along with gifts on the altar. As we know, Yeshua is the priest who performs those offerings. When our ancestors sold him to Rome, they said, "May his blood be on us and our children." They incurred on us a curse until we correct it. We cannot ask for healing and redemption until we understand the wrong that was done. He has ownership of the land, but he's a gentleman. We said, "We don't want you here," and he left. The moment we show him that we want him here, he'll be back. The thing holding him back is us. And the thing that can draw him back to the earth is us. The people who realize our ancestors cursed us with the guilt of his blood. And he is ready to forgive us, just like Joseph was ready to forgive his brothers. They literally dipped his blood in goat's blood, his cloak in goat's blood. In Revelation, it says that Jesus comes on a white horse with clothes dipped in blood. Symbolic of the son of Joseph, coming in power as the son of David. We have a lot of work to do. It is not time to be scared. It is time to put our heads together and become one. I encourage you all, and I bless you all. I ask God to bless you all. And I ask that he opens your eyes, and he opens your heart, and he opens you up to understand this and more. Everything that I'm telling you, I want you to look up. I want you to tell me if you think I'm wrong. I want your perspective. I have gone the last 15 years comparing every possible worldview, asking questions from every single person that I could ask questions from, receiving every bit of insight that I could from every single person, so that I could compile it and understand as much as I could from the experience that God has given me. And I expect all of you to do that too. That is what all of us should do. If you can give me insight, if you can correct me, I will take it. If I'm wrong on something, I'll take it. If I'm right, it's from God. This whole time, he has been teaching me these things. This is not from me. It has been slow, it has been painful, it has been backbreaking and heartbreaking. But he has slowly unraveled these things for me because I've been asking him the questions. And then I've been waiting for his answer. Ask the question. Ask him. I want you to be aware of these concepts and these principles and ask him. Don't yell at me for what I'm saying. If I'm right, I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. All I'm telling you is I got these questions from asking him. Or I got the answers from asking him. And I don't want you to take my answers. But I also can't just hold on to them because I've asked him the most important questions I could think of. And with chaos looming, if I don't share what I have learned, then it's I'm guilty of people who die as a result of the information that I have that I should have shared and didn't. So this has nothing to do with me trying to get my name out. It has nothing to do with me trying to get anything except I have to warn people what I know. Even if you think I'm crazy, even if I'm wrong. Because if I'm wrong, I'm doing my best. And if you can correct me, then great. Because I'm just trying to understand. And I don't want to offend anybody, but I also can't stand by with a lie anymore. There is only one way. There's only one truth. And there's only one light. And it is up to us to find it. Because the darkness is here. And it's here to stay. With that, I bid you guys a good night. Blessings. And let me know what you think. Thanks for listening, guys.